There's Jesse. All right. Carl, I imagine we've already tested out his audio and video.
Yes, I am here. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Carl.
Okay, everyone, we're now live. You may proceed.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the November 4th Mountain Community Capital Fund Operating Committee meeting. We have what I thought was going to be a light agenda, but it just as our we have a lot to talk about today. I'm going to jump right in and ask folks to go around and introduce themselves. I'll call you out as I go around the Brady Bunch screen here. Please identify yourself as a city or county appointee, if you are one of our lenders, and if you are a voting member. And then we'll do those real quickly and then jump down into our agenda. Good morning. I'm Jeffrey Kaplan, the chair of the Mountain Community Capital Fund, a county appointee and a voting member. I'm going to go to my left, Maui Vang.
Hi there, I'm Maui Vang. I am a voting member and a county appointee.
Jesse Maxwell.
Good morning, I'm Jessie Maxwell. I'm with Self Help. I'm one of the lenders. I also have a very squeaky chair. And I'm a non-voting member.
Very good. Thank you. Tara Brown.
I'm Tara Brown. I'm also a Self Help Credit Union Director of Community Engagement here in Western North Carolina, and am not a voting member.
Very good. Thank you. Carl Alguire. Good morning.
Good morning. I am an appointee. I believe I'm the county appointee, and I am a voting member.
I think Carl's actually city appointee.
I believe I'm a city appointee, and a voting member.
Very good. Thank you. All right, Angelica, I have you next.
Good morning, Angelica Driver. I am an employee of the City of Asheville, non-voting member.
Very good. Thank you. Rachel.
Good morning, everyone. Rachel Nygaard. I am both a county employee and a county appointee and a voting member.
Very good. Thank you. Timothy Love.
Good morning, Tim Love, Buncombe County Government, Buncombe County appointee and voting member.
Very good. Thank you. Dee Williams. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dee Williams, and I'm appointed by the city. I'm also a voting member, and I'm the president of Dee Williams and Company, Inc., and Eagles Wings Community Development Corporation of Western North Carolina.
Thank you so much, Dee. Nikki Reed.
Good morning. I'm Nikki Reed with the Community and Economic Development Department of the City of Asheville, and I am a city appointee voting member.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I'm looking, I don't see any other participants unless can't find a certain tab. Angelica, is this everybody?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Be on the lookout for, there's my participant tab. Be on the lookout for Yaslin Gonzalez from Mountain BizWorks. She has an agenda item coming up. But Jesse, if she's not here, are you able? Oh, look at that. There she is. Good morning, Yaslin. I was just saying you have an agenda item coming up. So that's why I'm going to be on the lookout for you. If you could just briefly introduce yourself and your organization, and if you are a voting member.
Yeah, sure thing. Yoslin Gonzalez, Mountain BizWorks, and I am a non-voting member.
Very good. And let me give you a quick shout out and praise, Yoslin. You and Matt did a fantastic job at this week's county commission meeting. I enjoyed watching that. You guys represented us, both represented this committee very, very well. So thank you so much for your work and, to keep this thing funded. We'll talk about that in a few moments.
Thank you.
So welcome everybody. First, I would like to ask that you all had a chance, if you all had a chance to approve the minutes from last meeting. I do realize I sent those out late. Angelica and I are working on calendar reminders, calendar reminders to make sure that we get things out sooner so you all have more time to review. I do apologize for that. Has everyone had a chance to approve the minutes? So first, I take a step back. Do we need to approve our agenda? No, we don't need a motion to vote on that, right? We're just good to go?
I don't think so.
Very good. Okay. So then to the minutes, if everyone's had a chance to review, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Carl. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Motion by Carl, seconded by Tim. All those in favor, if you could show your hands so it's easier to count up our voting members. All those in favor? Very good. Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. I'm going to jump now into old business, which is grant updates. We at this time have 2 grants applications under review to replenish our funds. As you all should know, might know, I think you know, we'll talk about today. We are tapped out of funds. We've deployed all $450,000 of the guarantee, which is a fantastic achievement in the, almost 2 years since we've been able to actually get money out the door. So yeah, it's great. It's certainly an accomplishment. We're going to look at some of that data today. But since we are out, we want to replenish these funds. As I understand it, even Mountain BizWorks alone, looking at one lender, has something like $2 or $3 million in the pipeline. So coming out of their programs, they've got people who are ready to take on advantage of this program. We have a grant for $450,000 with Dogwood Health Trust, which is finalized under review. We have a request with the county for $1.5 million, which we should hear hopefully by not this Tuesday, the following Tuesday at the 3rd Tuesday county meeting. This week is where Yoselin and Matt Raker were invited to speak more on a 5-minute presentation on the topic, and they were up there with Black Wall Street and Eagle Market Street Development Corporation. And then we have until Friday to finalize our application with the city, which I imagine will be pretty similar to the county application. And that is being led by, again, our colleagues at Mountain BizWorks. And that's what's happening with the grant updates. I think not that I have a crystal ball and not that I've arm twisted Rachel and Tim to find out how it's going, but it seems like at the county commission meeting, it was reviewed very favorably, that the program is seen as successful and should be continued to be funded. So we'll know about that shortly. That's where we are. Hopefully, I mean, if those 2 come in, that's another $2 million, which would, what is that? 4x our current, grant guarantee amount. And then, of course, we'll apply with the city. And again, everything is looking pretty positive. So I want to pause now and ask for any feedback, or are there other grant organizations folks are aware that we should be pursuing? Anything like that? Any other feedback? Maui, you have a hand up?
Yes, just a quick question. So for some of those grants, in particular the larger grant, does it come with conditions or reporting requirements? Just out of curiosity, what do we have to fulfill if we were to secure that grant?
Okay, I see a hand from Rachel. Looks like you want to answer that question.
I'd be happy to take the
Very good.
Response for the grant application to Buncombe County, which is the larger of the 2 that are pending. That is a request. The lead applicant is Mountain BizWorks, but it was submitted on behalf of the collaboration of funders, and we do have the entity Self-Help Ventures Fund, which is actually the fund holder. So if awarded, we would identify the recipient, whether that's Mountain BizWorks who submitted the grant or Self-Help Ventures Fund, the holder of the funds. Either way, these are federal dollars, so they do come with requirements. There's a fair amount of documentation that will go into place to establish what the funds can be used for, and reporting back on results of the funds in terms of jobs created, jobs maintained, things of that nature.
Thank you. Dee, you have a hand up?
So these are American Rescue ARPA funds for city and county. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so those funding streams are 26 million for the city and 52 million for the county. And I understand the county has also 26 million in reserve. Let me ask you this: do you plan to go back to the city and county for other grant funds? Because this American Rescue stuff is, as you say, federal funds that are set aside with special conditions, etc. So are you going back for CDBG and other funding from the city and county respectively for the guarantee portion? And these are guarantee funds. These are not for operations, correct?
That's correct. As more guaranteed funds. So I'm looking to this committee to see, right, are there other opportunities besides the ARPA dollars, which these 2 city and county ones are speaking of? yeah, looking for feedback and insight as to where else we should be applying, because there's clearly significant demand for these funds.
What I will say from the county perspective is we do have a number of different funding sources that are county funds or flow through county in the way that the ARPA, state and local fiscal recovery funds, are passed through. Anyone interested in looking at grant funding through Buncombe County can go to buncombecounty.org/grants. One consideration to keep in mind is that these grant opportunities are open to community-based organizations, and many of the lenders do apply and receive funds for their operations. And so we would need to sort of carefully think about any overlap or competition between MCCF, which is a collaborative, and individual proposals of the collaborative participants.
Jeff, another way that we could potentially try to apply for more money is going to banks. Not sure if we have enough data at this point to really offer that information that they will require for a bank. But I know that banks have to meet a certain, they have to lend out a certain amount of money or meet certain requirements because of the CRA Act. So they have to put CRA money to work. They're legally required to invest in their communities. So that's one way that we could do. We could try to get a little bit more money or apply. The thing is, not sure if we're still a little too young, maybe, to do that. But that could be something that we could look into.
If I could tag on to that, Yasleen, I think that's a great idea. And, representing county, of course, but, it's always great to see different types of funds for these types of programs, so that it's not just a local government sort of funded program. I think it'd be great if we could see some private sector money in this. And I hear you loud and clear that we may be too young, but I think that's a strong selling point for, if rejected, why it's important to have local government funds, but also if supported by private sector, it's a good collaboration.
Great comments all around. Taking some notes. And one of the questions that came up at the county commission was, at what point does this fund become self-funded, that the returns of the loans can perpetuate further lending? And again, very young fund. There's not a lot of data to be able to make those kind of decisions or insights.
Question?
Yes, Carl.
Is there some sort of common actuary for that, or based on the terms of the notes that we've placed already, is there some understanding of, what is that timeline? Is it 10 years? Is it 20 years? How long does that typically take?
Yeah, that's a great question that I would lean to our lenders to have some answer for that, because I'm like you, wondering what that is.
Well, I'll answer something similar to what Matt had said in our meeting. I know the Charlotte Fund operated for 20 years, and I believe at their 10-year mark, they were self-sustained. So I think at one point we're always going to have to go out and apply for more money so that we have more money to lend. However, they were self-sustained. So it is going to take, some time there. But we just, right now, because of the environment that we're in, still, we're still coming out of COVID, and there's still businesses that did take advantage of this fund are still in the recovery phase, and have also taken other recovery dollars. So it's unknown at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dee, you have your hand up?
Yes, thanks a lot, Jeff, and thank you to everybody, and to Yaslin and everybody reporting. One of the things that we've noted is that there is not a mechanism in place that grows these businesses so that they can go directly to banks or to the CDFIs without these guarantees. And so that is something that I've been working with a group of Black economic development professionals from across the state, and a few from just right around here, what few there are. So we're seeing, without seeing the actual tax returns of those individuals or looking at those financials, I venture to say the ones that I've seen indicate a certain weakness, and that there's a lack of growing these businesses to where they are commercially viable and competitive. So that's going to be the key, and that's what some of us are working on. That's all I want to interject. It's not going to happen magically just because you lend somebody some money. The idea is to graduate that firm and not to keep them in perpetuity. So thanks, appreciate that.
Can I interject just really quickly? And maybe
Yeah,
let's
we'll go.
begin.
Sorry, Maui. So Maui also had her hand up. So Jesse, if you want to go quickly, and then we'll go to Maui.
Yeah. So I wanted to, before we move past, piggyback off of what Yaslin was saying, and then also actually what Dee was saying as well. So I think at this point, the question shouldn't be when will this fund be self-sustaining, because the answer is it may never be self-sustaining. Given loan volume over time, typically loan loss reserves like this, they ebb and flow in terms of volume, and also given the varying amortizations and repayments and any sort of adjustments. What I think we should be looking for is looking at what point do we feel like the fund is stable and that we have a good idea of what the risk is and the risk for loss is. And then based on that, this is where I think the self-sustaining piece can come in. Once we have a better sense of what the portfolio is like and how the portfolio is performing over time, then we can go back and look at, okay, given the existing funds that we have, because right now it's basically a 1-to-1. So it's an 85% guarantee. Once those dollars are allocated towards a guarantee, that's it. So the next question would be, okay, are we comfortable, given how the loan is performing and given what the portfolio is, are we comfortable leveraging these funds so that instead of having more of a 1-to-1 relationship with outstanding loans, then they have, you can leverage 4 times over or 8 times over. And that's a way to grow the portfolio without necessarily having to grow the pool of money. So you're not looking for, is this dollar coming back in so that I can relend it? You're looking at, do we have a balanced portfolio, and do we have a good understanding of what the risk for loss is, such that we feel comfortable lending more than what is in the pool, because we know that only a certain amount of these loans are going to go bad over time, or are going to struggle over time. And I want to make a comment too, and I think this is important too to what Dee was saying, is that a lot of these businesses, yes, are in a growth phase. But I do think that it's important to understand too that lending is very healthy and thriving businesses also benefit from loans. And a lot of businesses, specifically Black and brown businesses, are very healthy businesses, but still lack some of the traditional credit box requirements that this fund could help mitigate. I'm sorry, Maui, your turn.
Thank you, Jesse. Maui?
Thank you. That actually clears up some of what I was going to ask. Mine is a little bit more of a logistical question. So I think I saw on the report from last time, there may have been one of the loans that were like refinanced or restructured. And so it was like kind of dropped off, and we were able to like recycle those funds. So the question is, if we are able to mature the companies, help them mature, and also the loans themselves get closer towards maturity, what do you guys think is the likelihood that businesses would essentially borrow for the whole length of the loan? Because some of them I think were more than 10 years. I think the shortest one was like 6 or 7 years out. But I'm just wondering if, because we're so young, but as we go along, we may have loans that are either payback, before they mature, or restructure, refinance in some way that we're not literally looking at 10 or 15 years until that loan is repaid. So the time horizon may not be quite as long as what it appears on paper.
Thank you. Vice Chair Love, your hand's up.
I think, Maui, great question. And I think Gasleen kind of shared expectations on some of the loans in the presentation with commission. I'll let Gasleen speak to that. But Jesse, I think what you just brought up is like the crux of the questions that we're hearing from our board. And so we may, the questions may not be coming in the way that they need to, but the question is, how do we impact more people? How do we leverage the funds? Like, what's the way? And we may not know that because we're not lenders. And I say we as local governments. And so I think we've talked about the ratio and the loan guarantee percentage, and that might not actually be relevant to the conversation at all. All our board is seeking is how do we get to, from 1x to 4x or whatever it is, so that we get more people guarantees, especially if we think that the portfolio isn't that risky. And I know it's young, but when we pitched this based on the Mecklenburg model, they were saying we only saw 5% rate of failure. So I think that's kind of the mix. And I know we got to get there, but that's the question.
Yeah. So I managed the Charlotte Community Capital Fund for 5 years now. So I can comment on that. And I think what is helpful is that the bulk of those, I would say, failures, the bulk of the defaults that ended up being charged off the bulk of them were associated with significant economic downturn in 2008, 2009, and 2010. So I think, there's part of portfolio, every loan portfolio is subject to economic conditions. And so I think, and then to go to your initial point in terms of how do we impact more people, I actually think that this committee is on the right track. So you had some test dollars to see if there's a market for it. There is 150% a market for it. So then you grow the fund, the pool of money enough to do more lending, which should get us to 2-3 years out, which is enough time to really evaluate the portfolio, especially as we're coming out of an economic depression. Fingers crossed, it still stays. Inflation's a whole thing. But anyway, to sort of evaluate where the portfolio is. And that's the opportune time to then talk about, okay, are we comfortable leveraging the fund? And when I say leveraging the fund, I mean, can we as a group get to a point where we have an anticipated default rate that we are comfortable with, that we can then choose to have more dollars in outstanding loans and guarantees than we have in the pool? And the assumption is not every one of these is going to default. But I think that's our general time horizon that we should keep an eye on. And I think that those are the moves. And it actually aligns quite well, too, with what Gasleen was saying earlier in terms of at what point do we feel like we are solid enough to go and get some CRA dollars from local banks, because that local investment also is a huge selling point. And if we can get other bank referrals and whatnot, that could be helpful. I take that back because I don't actually know that a bank referral is going to help recruit the community and the Black and Brown next businesses that we want to be impacting. So I'm going to step back from that, but you never know.
Well, I want to say that we are 20 minutes over on our agenda on this topic because we've discussed a lot of issues that I think have been bubbling up around the fund. And so I'm fine with that, discussing it. And there's a certain amount of kind of group maturity we're going through as we understand the ins and outs of this type of lending and intricacies of the industry. So I want to thank you all for your comments, but I do want to bring this topic to a close and move on to the rest of the agenda. And but at the level that this group is now operating at and the kind of discussions we're having, I'm very proud to be in a committee with you folks. With that, we're going to move into new business. The first is a recommendation on loan presentations by Yasleen and Jesse. And the context around this came out of, I guess, a couple meetings ago. I heard from a number of you that, I'll paraphrase in my own words, we seem to be improvising our way through loan presentations. There's a real delicate balance between what's private information, what we can't release, what we can't reveal, but what kind of information we all need to make a decision, so we're not, essentially rubber stamping what comes through, to be able to make a, act as fiduciaries of this public funds, to approve things we feel confident about. So having enough information that we're making good decisions, but not enough information that we're violating anyone's private information. So with that, Yasleen and Jesse are going to take the next chunk of time to share. I don't know if I would go as far as a proposal, because there's probably still room for discussion and improvement and feedback, but where we're headed with a more formalized, processized, professionalized loan presentation model for our group. Yasleen and Jesse, it's all you.
Yasleen, do you want me to talk about the report overview and then you can talk about the loan presentation document, or vice versa, or do you want to take all of it?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay. Dee, this has not been sent out earlier. I'm going to share my screen. Maybe. Present a window. Forgive me if this is goofing. I'm a Google Meet amateur. Okay. Can we see the Excel sheet?
Yes.
Great. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So, and this also, so Yasleen and I got together to talk about how we can do a better job of presenting portfolio information for a couple of reasons. One, we wanted to make sure that we were making it easier for the committee to pull out trends and triggers. And the second and third reason, general data tracking, but also as we're getting more money and the reporting requirements for these dollars, it's better to head off reporting requirements and already have that data in place that's easy to pull than it is to dig back and try and find it. So based off of our both of our experiences with prior grant dollars and prior funds, pulled out some of these key data points that we may or may not need to be sharing with some of our funders. So that was sort of the impetus behind the quarterly report overview. And all of this, while not, I'm still working on the Excel sheet to get it all automated because there's a few little glitches, but generally the presentation piece would look like this, where you would have the new loans for the quarter on top, and then you would have some summary information over the total loan count, and the notes will also describe to everyone what these numbers mean. Outstanding loan balance, outstanding guarantee balance, that means as of the month, or in this case, as of 10/31 or 11, I don't remember, but as of whatever date we pulled that, that would be the loan balance. Right here, we have our current maximum lending amount dollars, just to keep everybody in the same frame of mind. Hopefully those numbers will grow quite a bit in the coming months. And then the orange part are our trigger points. So that's according to the services and duties agreement for this operating committee. These are 3 of the key areas that we have got to monitor on a portfolio level every quarter. Because if any of these trigger points are reached, then the operating committee has to decide action, like putting a moratorium on the fund, or there are a couple of different action items that need to happen. First of all is the utilization rate. So that would be the maximum lending amount. This says 67% right now because this report overview only includes loans that have been closed. Because Yasleen will talk a little bit later, there are 4 or 5 that have been approved but haven't yet been closed. But because we know that things can happen between approval and closing, just counting the actual closed and dispersed dollars. Then there's a delinquency section, which is great to monitor because one of the trigger points is that our delinquent dollars as a percentage of the outstanding balance of loans can't exceed 20%. Great thing is that we're at 0. We don't have delinquent loans. And then the third trigger point that needs to be monitored regularly is the charge-off amount. That would be the credit loss, which cannot exceed 5% according to the services and duties agreement. We also included payoff because that also helps speak to the health and the cyclical nature of this fund. And then as most most places where we're trying to get funding, so the county, the city, specifically dollars, federal dollars, they're going to want some demographic information. And so this is a way to track the performance of the fund based on self-reported demographics. So this is what we're suggesting as a standard quarterly summary fund report that will, as Dee mentioned, was sent out earlier, would be sent out prior to the meeting for the operating committee to have time to review and develop questions. Rachel, you have a question?
Thank you for that overview, Jesse. I'm really excited about this format because I think it will help us have the ability to monitor and, like you said, notice those trends in the triggers. Maybe we can take this after the meeting and look at it in more detail and bring feedback. But at first glance, I'm really happy about what I'm seeing. A question that I have is about jobs. Are we tracking jobs, and can that be added here?
Certainly. It's not on here. It can be added here. Yeah, this is a proposal that this will be iterative until we get it right, hopefully next month. Maui?
Yes, two helpful bits of information, I think, for me and maybe others on this committee is since we don't have a long history of this committee, I think one of our probably leading indicators of risk at this point may be credit scoring. And so I was wondering if there's a way to incorporate average credit score into this.
No, we can't do that. That's not information that we can release. But I think now you'd also bring up a really good point. And Jeff and Tim, you tell me what you think about this idea. But I know that we've got some new members, and I know we've got a lot of money coming in. And so I was wondering if maybe we could take some time in the next meeting to review the services and duties agreement about what is the role of the operating committee, what sort of question, what guidance has been provided for the operating committee actions, and then what is the common underwriting agreement that all of the lenders have agreed to for this program, just to kind of clarify what our role is when we're looking at these numbers, when y'all are looking at these numbers and talking about it, but then also just to give the committee a refresher on the underwriting guidelines that we as lenders are using, which may help speak to a better understanding of what the risk is. So that's information that can be sent out beforehand or right after this meeting, but I don't know, it might be nice to either in this open public session or offline, talk through some of that. So I'll leave that to you guys to decide, but it was just an idea. Dee, sorry.
Thank you, and I apologize. Thank you, and I apologize for the delay. Thank you for the presentation as well. I was just wondering if the refinancings are part and parcel of this. From an actuarial standpoint, those refinances are a trigger also in the operating agreement. Is there a spot on here for those or no?
There is not a spot on here for articulating exactly which ones are refinances and which aren't.
That would be good because that is a trigger for us in the operating agreement. The other question, I guess, goes to the CDFIs. In the operating agreement or the underwriting, whatever documents we're going to peruse, we only have one lender that's participating in being a portfolio manager or taking on the risk of these loans. Is this are there different roles for the lenders, the CDFIs, I should say, other than, as you say, the holder of the fund and self-help and the whatever? Are all of them going to be making loans? And if there's a manpower problem or whatever, I guess I'm just looking at the way that it really operates. There seems to be just only one lender, which is Mountain Biz Cap, Mountain Biz Works. Can it operate differently? Do you have the capability of taking these loans on other CDFIs? And I guess self-help, since you're the holder, can you take some on? And Carolina Small Business Fund, can they take some on?
By take some on, you mean?
Take the loans, package the loans, put them on their portfolio. Because so far, Mountain Biz Works is the only one that has done that.
Yeah, so these loans, those are Mountain Biz Works' loans. Right now on the fund, where Self-Help, Mountain Biz Works, and Carolina Small Business Development Fund are authorized lenders, meaning that if we come across a loan that we have that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do, but for having this guarantee program, that's when we would bring that loan.
So just to be succinct, Mountain Biz Works is the only one that has performed or selected these loans, correct?
Yes.
Is there a particular reason why the other CDFIs have not taken them on?
Well, I can't speak to
what about your
small business, but I can speak to self-help.
Okay.
I'm a little confused by what you mean by taken on. We don't have any loans in underwriting.
Putting on your books. You haven't seen one that you would want to do without using the guarantee. I mean, we're doing semantics here now. In other words, Mountain Biz Works is the only one that has done the loans, has put them on their books with the guarantee.
Yes.
Are there others?
No.
Let me jump in and say that.
Okay,
Tara,
that's it.
Tara has answered it in the chat regarding self-help is generally above the dollar amount of this fund. Hence, they find it to be much out of their scope. If our fund operating agreement changes and our loan amount changes, I could see self-help doing more of the loans, but I don't want that to be seen as them not doing good work for this committee, which you can see that obviously we all see Jesse has done and Tara's done an incredible amount of work and on the back end with our grant applications to make sure that this committee is successful.
Yeah, I also, real quick, and then I will let Yasleen talk about the loan fund presentation, because I think there is an undercurrent question of, because as of now, so the three different lenders that are authorized lenders on this fund have different strengths from a lending perspective. And therefore will bring different types of loans. It is not a weakness of this program to have Mountain Biz Works do a bulk of these smaller dollar loans. In fact, that's the reason that they're an authorized lender on this loan. And I also think there is, if people are concerned about having one lender do a lot of these loans, that's why we have the common underwriting agreement, because we know that whether the loan is coming from Mountain Biz Works or Self-Help or Carolina Small Business, that there are common underwriting requirements that every single lender has to adhere to in order to be able to use this fund as a guarantee. And on that note, Yasleen, I'm going to stop presenting my screen. I'll send this out afterwards. And Rachel, I'm going to flag your suggestion too. And if you have other thoughts, send them our way so that we can incorporate.
Let me ask a question regarding the credit score average. On the current loan presentation form, we do see credit scores. Unless that's being removed, that's why I wonder if we could have that included on the. I love, by the way, the dashboard look and how it's aggregating itself, and you don't bring feelings to a data fight, and this gives us everything we need to make better decisions. So thank you so much for that. But that's my one clarifying question. If we currently have credit scores on the loan presentation, if that's going to change, Yasleen, let me know. If it's already out there, could it be included on the dashboard?
I'm going to jump in and say, so in the loan underwriting requirements, there's a general credit score threshold. I feel like the credit score should only be disclosed if for some reason there's there is a compelling reason to dip below the authorized credit score. Otherwise, that's
Great.
not information that should be shared.
I'm comfortable with that.
And I think that pertains to any sort of major exception that we're asking to have made, and that would be a great thing to bring to the operating committee, but generally speaking.
Sorry, getting my computer to work here. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay, and first off, I just want to say this is just a suggestion of presentations going forward. So there are some things that we can change, and we may change actually, and we can also, the lenders, if Jesse and Tara want to get together, and another member want to get together, and maybe work on something else, happy to. However, this is kind of our, and I took this from our own credit memo presentation that Mountain BizWorks uses. So I just want to point that out. So, gives you a little bit more information, and this was sent before, but I can send it again for review. So it talks about how long the business has been operating, in the mission fit area there, where they're located, of course, the amount, and then it does talk a little bit about the risk assessment, which I think may be helpful to go over and see. And then this does have credit score. However, we can omit that, like we just talked about. Then the collateral piece, I believe we can probably take that out because we know why we're coming here. And then it talks a little bit more about the technical assistance piece and a little bit more about the revenue here. So it does give a little bit more information there. Like I said, it can be adjusted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
A couple factors, Yasleen, and I think this is helpful. And I could see this, being presented, walking us through the narrative of the business, which is, I think, what we're looking for to understand the context of what we're looking to fund, other than, what's on paper. So first, it jumps out to me as proposed risk grade of 3. That's unique jargon to me. Out of 100, out of 10, out of 5. So maybe if there's
I meant to take that piece out. Yeah, that's just Mountain BizWorks risk rating. What we usually start businesses at, from a 1 to 6.
Okay. But yeah, if you take it out, I don't know, I kind of like keeping it in, but just understanding the scale, is 1 high, is 1 low, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And maybe an example of what's a 1 business, what's a 6 business, so we can see where this fits in. Under the NAICS item of retail, so that's not how I'm familiar with NAICS codes. I know we've been using retail or service in our lingo through the committee for the past couple of years. I'd like to see that have a lot more detail. So obviously we don't want to reveal the exact business, but you can drill down pretty low into NAICS codes, even if it's, a quick service countertop restaurant or a sit-down restaurant. Like you get those kind of very granular details with NAICS codes. So how do you or the committee feel about getting more granular in that section? Do I take the crickets that we have no feelings about changing that, or I want to hear that too, if people think that's good enough?
I think as much detail as possible is helpful. And I also wondered about, sort of the asset value to loan value. Like, how is this collateralized in some way? Because that's sort of the big piece that we don't understand is, we're lending money for equipment, but there's no other significant information there to suggest whether or not that's within the realm of what they can handle, or, are they already leveraged on equipment, stuff like that.
All right, let's go with some more of the hands up, and then we'll come back to this round of feedback. Dee?
And I'll try to be very quick. Thanks for taking my question. I just wondered if there's an area on the sheet. First of all, does it replace the sheet that Jane Hatley and I worked on when we were doing the NAICS codes on it, coupled with the demographic data? Also, does it have an area for refinancing on from existing portfolio? And pretty much just to get an idea of what this form does it replace the one that we put out earlier? Some of y'all were there when we worked on it, and much discussion, and the committee approved it. So just basically want to answer to those questions.
Yeah, I'll answer that briefly, Dee. That sheet was I think a really strong starting point and has much of this information. I think this is more expanded to give us more of the detail for the narrative of what we're funding.
Okay, so it does replace it. Am I to understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, what about demographic data? Is that there too? Because that was something that we also, the NAICS codes, I'm glad you brought it up. That's the only thing that really triggered, because I'm a big one on those codes. Two, that's the one unique thing that we did put forward. I just wanted to sort of reference that we did have a form. A lot of y'all are new and don't know it, but we did, and we did work on it, and the committee did approve it. So that's the only thing that even let me think that what work we started with was expounded upon. So I just wanted to make that clear. And also, is there an area for refinancing? If this is a refinance, is that included as well on this form?
It's on there. However, I don't, this is my opinion as a lender. I don't really understand how a refi is really.
It's a trigger under the operating agreement, is a trigger that stops any certain number of refinancing, stops those loans from going forward in the operating agreement that the city set up and that Charlotte has too. I think we went over that at one point. It was a trigger to stop lending altogether. So we do need to know if these are refinances.
And I'll add one piece of perspective to that. We're a small enough committee and small enough town that we can track the narrative of these entrepreneurial journeys. And so the refi to me is part of the context of the story of the founder. Anyway,
I'm sorry, it's part of the, should it be on the form? That's all I'm asking.
I think so. I actually agree.
I do too.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dee.
And it also is part of the operating agreement. If we'll look in our manuals, it is a stopping point. If we get over, I believe it's 2, we're to stop lending. If it's the portfolio freezes. So that's another thing that, like you said, we need to revisit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dee. Jessie has a number of items in the operating agreement that she's going to be suggesting we reevaluate in the coming meetings. And so let's make sure that refinancing is considered in that discussion as well. I think Tara's hand went up before Angelica's. Tara, do you want to go?
Sure, thanks so much. So I would just add that I know this form has gone through different iterations, and I think it's always been trying to find a balance of giving the committee the information that they need without sharing too much personal identifiable information with the public about the business and the funding that they're seeking. So I would say, in my opinion, I agree that the code is good and general enough that it probably wouldn't be identifiable, but only that 2-digit code, because that's just the general category, like retail, manufacturing, that kind of thing. But if you give the full code, then it might be more identifiable because it gets more specific about what type of business it is. And I know we've been through this conversation before, that if you put specifically what type of business it is, that a lot of us in the room and maybe people in the broader community might know exactly which business it is. And we want to keep that, confidential from the public.
So, Tara, I'm going to put you on the spot. If we're not going to be revealing more information through a NAICS code, how else can we get a fuller picture of the context of the venture?
Well, I do think the 2-digit code is okay, and that it would be something equivalent to, saying this is a retail business, something like that, but not getting specifically into the type of retail business. Does that make sense?
So, for example, if I was to open an electronics repair business versus an apparel business, you would say that's too much detail?
I think, I think that that's what we've decided in the past. And I know, just as someone who's shown up to these meetings, there were times in earlier meetings where I could absolutely know. I remember one time they said, this is a screen printing and sneaker business. And, I absolutely knew which business that was. And so it's some balance there. And I don't know, what the right answer is, but I do think there are cases where if we use the full code, it would be, easily identifiable, because we do have such a small entrepreneurship community.
Yeah, but that's a good point. And I wonder if screen printing and shoe, that's a really good example, is too specific, whereas that being a retail apparel business is generic enough.
Probably.
Do you feel good about that? I think just calling retail or service or food is too generic, but I also agree, you're giving away the goose when you give that much detail. So again, it goes back to the balance. What's enough to make a decision, but enough to keep it private?
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Angelica, you have a hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to make the committee aware, because I've seen a lot of activity in the chat, that the way that we need to run virtual public meetings is if you have something material to the conversation to say, you should speak it out loud rather than to put it in the chat, because if it goes in the chat, it may not be entirely captured in the video view, and that can make it difficult also for people who have visual disabilities and are just listening along.
Very good. Thank you for that reminder, Angelica. Don't know what we would do without you. Dee, you have a hand up, and then Rachel.
Thanks a lot for just recognizing me. Well, I know we all have opinions, but there's legal issues too. And I think if we're going to look at putting the North American Standard Industrial Classification codes in, there's very few places you can go where you don't use the NAICS code. This is a small town, it's true. And everybody kind of knows everybody, especially when you look like me. But this is ridiculous. We're here to make consummate decisions. And if we're going to get really technical about it, PII, that's not real. I mean, let's put it this way. If you're going to make a legal decision, you need to consult an attorney. We got a city attorney and we have a county attorney. So it may be that we need to go to them like we did the last time about this form. We did go, by the way, you guys, they did review it with the NAICS code on it. And guess what? Brad Branham said it did not violate PII. It's like we're reinventing the wheel for no good reason other than our opinion. So an attorney has reviewed it. The city attorney reviewed the old form that Jane Hatley, the former director of self-help, and I came up with. And the NAICS codes were not considered any violation of PII. And we can go again if y'all want to. And that's all I have to say. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Dee. Rachel?
I appreciate Dee's comment. It tees me up to the procedural kind of thinking where I'm sitting and taking notes, and I've made a note both on the reporting template and on this credit memo and term sheet of all the proposed revisions. I'd be happy to send that to Jesse and Yasleen so that you've got the lists of things that categories of topics people mentioned. I think what I heard is that you all would look at those two documents with these revision suggestions in mind and then send a copy out to the group. I'd like to propose that we that we consider approving it with the vote. Jeff, you were saying you weren't sure whether or not this would be adopted by vote, but maybe next meeting we could take a vote on it. But with Dee's suggestion, if we need to add the step in of legal review before it gets there, it would be worth waiting to the next month if we need to.
So would a legal review need to happen in an open meeting, or could we forward a copy to the city or county attorney and ask for feedback that we could present to the committee?
The latter makes sense to me.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yaslin, can I ask you to scroll to the second page? I want to make sure we get a chance to review what's on the loan summary here. Thank you. I appreciate the risk assessment section. And then I will also echo Carl, and I think it is important to keep the collateral in if and when there is collateral with the business. If there's no collateral, because I don't know, it's a software business and they got 3 laptops, we should know that too. And again, I understand our fund is there to help people without collateral, but I think that refers to a personal rather than business collateral, right?
Sorry, say that one more time.
When I hear we give loans out to folks without collateral, I think we're referring to like a mortgage or a lien or something like that, not specifically the collateral in the business that financing is being used for. You're saying no. So
Yeah, it's
educate me a little
personal.
bit about that. Okay.
Yep.
So I think it's worth having that context in the discussion, and then we remind ourselves that our fund exists to help people without collateral get loans. But it's worth knowing if there is or isn't any collateral. And I will share that on the previous PII form. I'm sorry, the proposal form by Dee and Jane. I really like seeing I think it was a table with revenues and profits for the previous years. So you have a revenue and net profit cell. Well, that's an example of a company started in August 2020. Okay, so there's only 1 year there. I would just ask it, and if there is multiple years, that it's broken out by the fiscal year. Any other discussion about this? I feel like now I'm just talking out loud, which is not a good use of public or your time. All right, so to wrap this up, Rachel, you're going to be sending out the comments and feedback to Jesse and Yaslin. From there, we'll go to the Cedar County Attorney and then vote on this. I would like to vote on it with a suite of other items that we might be updating in the operating agreement, if that's acceptable to everyone else. So at the next meeting, we can look at, oh, I'm seeing so many hands up. So I'll finish that thought. Thank you, Dee. Appreciate your time. At the next meeting, look at, right, Jesse? I think I'm addressing you here. Do you want to look at operating agreement together?
I don't think we're updating the operating agreement, though certainly that can be put on the table. I think we're reviewing the operating agreement to make sure that our new members and our members, that we're all working on the same page. So like for one thing that is we need to reintroduce and talk about is the fact that there is a credit underwriting committee that is a subcommittee on this operating committee. And it's this credit underwriting committee's responsibility to do a general review of loans over $70,000.
I'm going to pause here for a moment then, Jesse.
That's too much detail. We can talk about that later.
And that's where I was going with that. So action item from this section is to take the proposed changes to Yaslin and Jesse. I'm going to ask Vice Chair Love to lead circulating that with the attorneys and then bringing that to the next meeting for approval. Thank you, Tim. And I'm doing that because I won't be here at the next meeting, which we'll address at the end. We are way over time, but I think I saw more hands up. Maui?
Yes. So just as Rachel's taking down like the things that we proposed, I mean, the proposal that we just saw, that outline, it's quite a bit more detailed than some of the data that is fed into the dashboard. So I don't know if we ever quite agreed on whether we were keeping credit score in there. And then I also saw like the loan maturity, like the terms. That I think is another helpful element to see aggregated into the dashboard. So I know we're low on time, but I don't know if we'll get another chance to talk through some of these items that would be helpful. I know for me to see, like, if we were to in the future take on a certain loan, how would that impact our effective maturity of our fund?
So let me speak to the credit scores. I believe Rachel will have in the notes different opinions in the credit scores that we'll ask Jesse and Yasleen to figure out. Jesse's comment is it's only relevant when it's below a threshold, and Yasleen is saying that Mountain Business practice we've had historically is to have it included. So I'm going to ask our lenders in their review before sending Tim to address the credit issue. Is that reasonable to you, Maui? Thank you. Rachel, you have a hand up?
My format of note taking is to capture the areas that were discussed, not the specific opinions or comments or attributing them to any individual. So it'll just be general that was a proposed addition in there. I would like to ask, just to clarify, Jeff, you said that we were talking about updating the operating agreement. Jesse, you said maybe not.
Yeah,
What's the status on that? Because that opens a whole different level of
Reviewing
involvement
the
and
operating agreement.
Yeah, I don't think
and
we're there.
signatories and all that.
Just
Okay.
We're
reviewing.
not there.
Thank you for confirming.
Very good. I'm glad we're having this discussion. It seems like we're moving in the right direction, again, to the balance of what gives us information we have to make a good decision, also protecting the identity of the individuals applying for funding. Our next agenda item is loan presentations, CDFIs. I don't believe we have any, do we? All right, well, look at that. Now we're back to almost on schedule. Fund remainder, this will be pretty brief. CDFIs, may I ask what is our fund remainder? And that'll tee up our next item, which I'll share my screen for.
We are essentially out. There is no guaranteed dollars at this time.
Which means we did it. Okay, so I bring that up to our next item, which is performance review. The slide you're seeing is part of a series of 7 slides that Matt and Yasleen used with the county commission meeting. I asked Matt to send me the slides. I want to share this one with you. We began our meeting, congratulating each other on, really fulfilling the mission of this committee to deploy this capital to founders and entrepreneurs of color without possibly poor credit or criminal history or no collateral. And I want to share with y'all the impact this fund has had to date. As you can see, 17 loans made at $580,000, 90.5 FTE jobs created or retained, which is incredible. 100% BIPOC, 51% woman-led. Yasleen, any other commentary you want to share about this slide or anything else in the presentation you want me to bring up? I just want to share this with our committee for them to have a reference to the impact they're having.
No, I think this is a great quick snapshot.
Yeah, and thank you again for putting this together. And once again, I want to say thank you again for representing us so well with the county. Vice Chair Love, you have a hand up.
Yeah, and Rachel and Nikki, I'd like your input on this, but doing some type of press release or announcement about these results. I mean, this is a positive story. I think a lot of people aren't necessarily familiar with the fund. It's a good idea. Rachel and Nikki, I wonder what your thoughts are in terms of doing that, or how we do it, or how we shouldn't do it.
I'll chime in and say I think it's a great idea, Tim, because the first thing I thought was how can we share this information through to our city council members, thinking about different committees of council, or even at a city council meeting. And I'm curious how we may have updated city council in the past. That's something just that I'm not aware of, being that I'm newer in this with this committee. So yes, Tim, I think at certainly a press release is a great starting point, and I'll be curious again to learn if there's any other options that we may want to pursue too. But I really think it's a great story, and we should share this out.
Yeah, great. Tim, I got an email this morning from AVL Today looking for more stories on entrepreneurs. And maybe this is a good one to share, kicking off with this data and then asking them. And now, Yasleen, would that be inappropriate to have them reach out to you to look for stories for people to talk about from the MCCF?
I would have to refer them over
Yeah.
to our communications manager.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's connect all those dots. Thank you, Tim. Great suggestion. Nikki, I'd love to hear. I think we should like get a skywriter to talk about this. I'm looking for like an airplane pulling a banner. I really want to let people know the impact this fund is having, that it's available, and that we're, I think that kind of builds more momentum with funders as well to establish almost a brand of it. Maui Vang, you have a hand up?
Yes, just a quick question. For the very bottom right, where it says plus equitable financial product innovation, if someone can expound a little bit more on that.
Sure. That was referring to a program that Mountain BizWorks actually piloted in 2021 called the Catalyst Program, which has tied very closely to the MCSCF. And we've been able to put money to work by using MCCF dollars, or get the MCCF guarantee to, and the Catalyst Program tied together pretty much.
Well, let me ask a clarifying question that I came up in conversation with someone this week. Does the MCCF fund, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it a different way. Are entrepreneurs coming out of the Catalyst program getting their funding through the MCCF program? Is it a one-for-one, or are there other avenues of funding for folks in Catalyst?
Say that one more time.
Do the folks in Catalyst get their funding through MCCF?
Not all of them, but
Okay.
yes, for the most part.
Very good. So we discussed earlier a bit about the amount of assistance and venture development needed to go along with venture financing. I think Catalyst is a shining example of that. Rachel, you have a hand up?
I do, thank you. Responding to Tim's suggestion around media and press outreach, I think it is a good idea. I'm hesitant because of the timing with pending funding. The date that you mentioned, Jeff, when we could be hearing an announcement from county commissioners, is about a week and a half out. And the city has an RFP process which will be under review, and it may or may not be appropriate to go to city council with a project specific update when council is also considering funding for it. So it's something just to be mindful of as we figure out the timing of that rollout. It could be that we have a major grant to announce and we could tie some of that result celebration to it and link these together.
Would it be appropriate to, I don't want to kick this to subcommittee per se, but ask for a volunteer from the committee to run with the marketing communication so that this could happen without needing to convene the entire group? Is that possible?
Yeah.
Essentially, ask someone to volunteer to say, yeah, I'll work with everyone to get the press release out and the timing out and understanding if it should be before or after 2 Tuesdays from now, hopefully with good news.
Jeff, I'll take it unless someone else has interest. But and Nikki, just talking out loud, what I would think, settle on the county grant, which Rachel indicated is a week and a half out, and then from there do some type of release. Unless you tell me you have a concern that we don't want it to be a hard sell, and trying to like force city council to do something, or commission for that matter. So if you want to think about that, and then we can either hit the middle point between our two processes, or we can wait until yours kind of wraps up. We can talk about it.
Sounds good. And I know Angelica is also, she does a lot of communications for our team, so we'll bring her in too. So sounds great. Thanks, Tim.
Wonderful. Well, too proud of y'all. I'm exceptionally proud to be on this committee with you folks doing this kind of work. And as I said, you don't bring feelings to a data fight, but this data gives me good feelings. With that, we'll go on to our final topic. Rachel, you can laugh. It's okay. Round table updates. And this is just a chance for folks to share any updates they have coming up. Like, for example, I will not be at our December meeting. So Vice Chair Love, you'll be leading our December meeting. I don't know if I'll be at the January meeting either. Any minute now, my wife's going into labor and I'll be taking some time off for leave. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Jesse. God willing, everything goes well. So I'll be out for some time, definitely in December. I'm not sure when I'm coming back in January. But I will be back for 3 days in December. So if you want to get together and say hi, that will be at the Venture 15 and Venture Asheville Honors. And do have a request for you all. First, you should come and buy tickets. It's where we publish the rankings of the 15 fastest growing startups in the area. And we also hand out awards for Entrepreneur of the Year, Mentor of the Year, Investor of the Year, Resource Program of the Year, which MCCF might be a wonderful candidate for, and the Shining Rock Award, which goes to, oh, congratulations, Tara. You're leaving soon. Can I ask you your delivery date or what your due date is? Not delivery date.
I'm due on Thanksgiving.
Are you? Okay. So our
Yes.
official due date is the 19th.
Wow.
But if you ask my wife, things come in like any minute. So
Sorry I didn't think that was material to the conversation, so I just put it in the chat. But
oh, my bad.
for all the public, I am
bad,
pregnant
sorry.
and going on maternity
Oh my
leave.
gosh.
It's so fun to see people in real life that you usually just see on Zoom. And I
Yeah.
passed you recently at the lake and I was like, oh, wow.
Awesome. Well, Tara, we'll warm up a nice, sweet admission for you if that's where you're going. Congratulations to you and your family. Where am I going with this? So Venture 15, so the 15 companies, they apply themselves, but we need nominations for Entrepreneur of the Year, Investor of the Year, Mentor of the Year, and Shining Rock Award. Shining Rock Award is for an individual who's like the up and coming entrepreneur. Last year it went to Jasmine from More to Love. The year before that, Caroline Bauer from No Sweat Undies. The year before that, Alone Kaplan with Alone Tree. So I'm going to look to our lenders here. Gosling, last year, Mountain BizWorks swept the Venture Asheville Honors with Mentor of the Year going to Matt Godfrey for Waypoint. The Vanguard Award went to Matt Raker. You guys got Resource of the Year and Investor of the Year. So we look to all of you, but especially Mountain BizWorks, to keep nominations going out because we need nominations to hand out these great awards. And that'll be on December 16th. But nominations are open now at ventureasheville.com/venture15. So for some of the entrepreneurs we're working with or the resources we work with, please nominate those folks. Personally, kind of terrified that I'll be on leave throughout the whole application and selection process. So I'm leaning on my team to round up applications. So I'm asking folks like y'all to get those nominations and applications in and help spread the news that's open for the Venture 15. Carl, you have a hand up. You have a hand, yeah.
Yes, I was just looking for a link for that event, but I think you gave it at the end. So.
I put it in the chat, Angelica. Is that all right? I'll announce it. It's ventureasheville.com/venture15.
Great, thank you.
They're on sale now at the Orange Peel, December 16th. Other roundtable updates. Anything for the good of the group?
Yeah, we will not be wearing the red blazer this year.
I am retiring my red blazer. The theme this year is gold because I don't know if y'all heard, we recently won a gold ranking from the International Economic Development Council, specifically for this event. So this year we're going gold because we won gold. Anything else?
Hey, Jeff, I'll chime in. When we last met, we talked about getting a group of small business organizations together to talk about ways to collaborate. And a handful of y'all were on that call. I thought we had a really good discussion and from my perspective, accomplished our initial goal, which is we identified resources, organizations that, even that small group of people was not familiar with. And since then, we've continued to do that. I've had really good conversations with the folks at AB Tech and Western, where they shared a very cool resource map tool that is based in Western North Carolina that I had never heard of. So I think there's just there's a wealth of resources in our community, and I am going to bring that group together again in about 2 weeks, again, with the goal of, let's just make sure we're talking, identifying how our pipeline works so that we're best serving small businesses in our community. So more to follow on that, but if you know anybody that needs to be at the table, it's an open table. I'm looking forward to chatting with y'all again on Friday in 2 weeks. But just wanted to share a little bit on that. And again, I appreciate everybody's support.
Thank you, Tim. Keep us posted on that progress. It looks like it's going the right direction. Angelica, is there anybody from the public on for public comment?
We do not have any callers at this time.
Okay, with that, we are right up 1 minute over. I'm going to adjourn the meeting now. Thank you all for your time. Happy Thanksgiving. We will see some of you, except for Tara and myself, at our December meeting. Okay, have a great weekend, folks. See you soon. Thank you. Bye.